folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show just for you with my special guest, Karen Holton. And tonight, all the way from her British Columbia, right? Is that not
Um,
correct?
Red Deer, Alberta.
Oh, Alberta, all the way from
Yeah.
Alberta. That's right. Okay, so there you are. And tonight we got her. Karen Holton is an ET angelic experiencer, an author, and a trans-dimensional channel who helps others awaken to higher consciousness. She's the author of Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, the book we're going to be talking about tonight, and Transdimensional 2, Meet the Greys, picture book. And that is available on Amazon. And Karen hosts two popular podcasts, Forbidden Knowledge News Network, on the network, the Quantum Guides show, and Alien and Angels, exploring awakening, contact, dimensional living. She also offers a free online course, Quantum Health Transformation, and I got to get signed up for that. It's available at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. So check that out. Karen teaches that self-love and self-care are the keys to personal ascension and a real change for this world. So look that all up. It's in the description below. All her links are right there. Everything from her YouTube channel to the link tree, and that'll get you somewhere, and you get on over there. But right now, Karen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you about my book and my experiences. And thank you for reading the book. It makes such a wonderful difference when I'm on
Yep.
a show with someone who knows what the heck I'm talking about. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Robert.
Oh, not a problem. I enjoyed the book. Actually, it reminded me of a lot of the discussions I've had with other people on this show, except for, there was a lot of things in there that they talked about that you talk about here. And it's a really good awakening in my head because it just tells me, as we talked about before the show, you can't dismiss it. You have to say, you experienced this, and you can't make this stuff up. I mean, that's the thing. And I'm sure you've heard that before, where people say, she's just delusional. What kind of drugs are you taking? Have you heard that?
Yeah, well, most people tend to people who can't handle the information tend to categorize it in one of two ways. Either I'm being controlled by demons and I'm evil, or I'm crazy and belong in a nut house. Like that seems to be the two defaults.
See, and that's probably right. See, the church going people, there's only us. Everything revolves around the earth. That's it. Believe in God. That's it. None. There are no aliens. It's all fake. Blah blah blah. And then there's the other people who maybe not church going people, so they have to justify by saying you're crazy. There's no such thing. I haven't seen it. I have no proof. There you go. Yeah. So it's not like that. I think you have the whole universe out there. I mean, you could stand out in your backyard and look up at the stars, and you see the moon and the planets and stars and stars and stars and stars. And some of those stars have planets around them just like ours does. Now, don't you tell me that we're the only people in this whole universe. Come on. I can't believe that.
And it's actually juicier even than that, because there is our three-dimensional universe. There is all the universes in the multiverse. Then there is all the dimensional realities. Then there are the angelic realms. There are more realms than you could shake a stick at. So, I mean, if that isn't enough to blow your mind, I don't know what is.
Yes. Well, and that's true. And even the church people have to recognize that they were talking about the higher realms, even when they were talking about God and angels and all that. There's the heavens and the stuff, the nine realms above, above and above and above and above. Come on, you can't say one thing and not believe another. And
A
so,
lot of people who are religious and some who aren't believe in the power of prayer, and they've had results from their prayer. Well, that's transdimensional contact.
yes, yes, exactly. So I always look at it and say, well, if God did create this planet and all the people on it, then God must be an alien, right? It's as simple as that, because he wasn't from here. Anyway, nonetheless to say, let's get back to the book. The idea is, you know, okay, so where did this all begin? That's a big question. It doesn't sound like, to me, from reading the book, it doesn't sound like you were a little kid, but it does sound like that you might have inherited it, some aspect from your family.
Yeah.
So why don't you take it from there?
Well, I'm very much like my maternal grandmother, which is my mother's mother. And she was born into, oh, probably very early 1900s. And she was raised in a logging camp because that's where her mom and dad worked. And there were no other children for her to play with. And she used to go out into the woods and she would come back and talk about what she did with her friends, and everybody just kind of thought it was like an imaginary friend because it was, she was a child and kids do that. But then later on, she never really had use for getting involved in community drama, because later she moved into little towns and cities, got married, had a family, and she just took very good care of her children. And she was available for natural healing and midwifery. And she always kept contact with these friends of hers. So even when they weren't around her physically, they were still connected to her. And she always communicated with them. She always had amazing natural abilities in the healing art. She knew what flowers from the meadow for to help someone with one kind of illness or another. Um, and nobody knew how she could figure all that out. She only had like grade 5 education, and the doctor would come and get her to help and assist with midwifery. She did some midwifery on her own. But anyway, long story short, then she had my mom, and my mom definitely had worked also as a natural healer. She never charged money for it, but she would help people from all over the place. And but my mom was afraid of the paranormal. She didn't understand it. She didn't know what it was. And so I think she probably would have had contact as well. And maybe she did, but she doesn't remember. That's a real common theme. And then it got passed on to me, and I started having paranormal experiences as a young child. And even I speak about the fiery griffin that used to come and protect me when I was afraid as a child. And I was so terribly afraid I couldn't sleep, and I'd tuck under the covers and I wouldn't be able to breathe. And it was pretty horrible. And then one time there was this fiery griffin. I can't explain it. I didn't even know what a griffin was at the time. A griffin has the body of a lion and it has the wings of an eagle. But this one was all made of fire. I have an image here that represents me with my griffin.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to come and it used to protect me, and I would know that I was safe when it came. And I don't know, like looking back and remembering, I don't know if it actually appeared as a physical three-dimensional solid thing or whether it was in the portal of my mind's eye, which I believe is a technology for transdimensional contact and travel. I don't know, but it sure did help me. Now, many years later, that could have been ET contact with a screen memory. So it's really hard to present facts. And I think that's one thing that everybody who's into ufology and ET contact, they want facts, but a lot of it defies the facts, is outside of our three-dimensional reality. We're not even given concepts to be able to talk about it. We're not given language. And so the only kind of information out there has been what I would call arcane knowledge, which is buried in the mystery schools, and it's very difficult to learn. I took a lot of what I coincidentally found as being mystery school teachings, which just unfolded in my own life. And then later on, I found out that they were also mystery school teachings. There's a lot of that in my book, but I've demystified it. I've made it so that anybody can understand it. You don't have to be an adept. You don't have to go sit in the Himalayas with a guru. I've laid it out as practically and on a very basic level as possible.
Well, those mystery school teachings had to come from somewhere, and I think you're probably right. They give you this information, and then it's up to you to do something with it. And if you pass it on, or I'm sure there's people who get contact and get the information, and then they don't know what to do with it, and there it sits with them, and that's it.
I think that could be true for sure. So then I have in my book, I have some information. It starts off chapter 1 giving some clarification, who I'm with, who I'm not with. And basically, I'm not with anybody. I'm not part of any ET culture or storyline or Ashtar Command or super space program, nothing like that. And I want people to know that although my experiences are very real, they happened to me at night while I was asleep. So I do not have any recall of a spaceship showing up and picking me up or anything like that. I just was either here, or when I went to bed at night, I was there. And it only lasted for a 3-month period of time. That's our time. So time is different when you I don't know if any of you saw the movie called Interstellar. What I liked about it is it really showed you the difference in time depending on where you are in the galaxy or even in our star quadrant. It could be quite different. Well, transdimensional time is different too. So I would go to bed at night. I'd be gone for days, weeks, even months, and then wake up back here on Earth as me, Karen Holton, in my own little bed. And it would freak me right out in the beginning, especially. I thought I was dreaming, but it wasn't like any kind of dreams I'd ever had. My dreams tend to be nonsensical, kind of drift from one idea of what's going on to another. They don't make a lot of sense. Sometimes I don't remember them. This was very different. And this was congruent. So every time I went to bed at night, I was back in the other world. When I woke up in the morning, I was back in my world. So the easiest way to describe it is when I'm here, I'm here. And when I'm there, I'm there. And it only lasted for 3 months. But my total experiences was more like 3.5 years worth of experiences. That was a lot to unpack. And I just want to say one other quick thing, and that is, you hear about people saying, oh, yeah, I've been in touch with ETs all my life. I'm in touch with the Greys, and they pick me up, and we go to Zeta Reticuli, and we go here, and we go there, and then I come back. Meanwhile, they're getting up in the morning, and they're going to work, and they're having normal life. I can't see how that's possible, because I was completely screwed up from these experiences. Now, the experiences were very positive, but it was just a lot to unpack. What the hell is going on? Trying to make sense of it. Almost like my life there was more real than my life here. And the difference in the way communities interact and the way they each of what I call the big ship, which you might consider a mothership, has millions of beings on board. Their culture and their way of doing things is so superior to us. And to come back to this world was really depressing and demoralizing, I have to say. And it got very.
Can I ask you a question before you move on?
Yeah.
There's so much stuff here. You're going.
I know. Sorry.
when you got to the ship, um, when you had your first encounter, and you were there, you in the book it says you were there with a bunch of people, a bunch of other people. Were they Earth people, all Earth people, or different Earth people, or different planets
No,
people?
no, and I wanna, if you
And
don't mind, I'd like to just give a visual to everybody so they can,
yes.
an imaginative visual,
Hmm.
so you can all understand something. The big ship, I wanted to know, it took me the longest time to figure it out. I wanted to know, where is it? Is it in our solar system? Is it in our star quadrant, which is a little larger than a solar system but smaller than a galaxy? Is it in our galaxy? Like, where is it? And I came to understand that it's everywhere and it's nowhere. And let me explain what I mean by that.
Hmm.
I'm hoping everybody out there has had the experience of a Venn diagram. A Venn diagram is where you have shapes that represent different things, but they overlap at one tip or one end. And where they overlap, they're able to share space. That's a Venn diagram. So imagine in your mind's eye a daisy with like 100 petals, and they're all connected at the center of the daisy. And some of those petals represent different dimensions, the different astral planes, different, like the angelic realms. It's different positions in different timelines, as you would understand from looking at things as being a multiverse. There is so much diversity and different levels and layers and places that we could go and have non-human intelligence and have meaningful connections. So imagine the big ship is like the center of that daisy. It sits in an interdimensional envelope. And in that way, beings can immigrate and emigrate and come to visit and get training. And it's a place where people go, well, people from here, but also people from all these different realms come together with one basic goal and one basic culture. And each big ship, or what we would consider mothership, has its own culture. They're all different. There's no binding on us to have to form a specific politic or cultural expectation, and everything is changing all the time. But the beings, I found myself initially in this huge big room, and I was with other beings, and I thought they were people like from Earth. And I went up and I'd start trying to talk to them, but they didn't communicate the way I did, they didn't share the same language. Like, something was really off, and I knew that these people at this point, that's what I thought they were very interesting. And there was definitely a peaceful vibe. There was no competition or anger or anything to upset us. We were just kind of like, we knew that we were there for a reason. We were waiting for that reason to unfold. So the other thing I want to mention is the big ship is alive. It's alive and conscious. And it doesn't have mechanical moving parts like we'd expect. It actually has self-assembling biological nanotechnology. So for instance, this room had no doors, it had no windows, but pretty soon 2 doors appeared at either end of the room. They were huge arch shaped doors. They just materialized. It looked like magic. And then in came an entourage, and then they indicated at that point, I didn't really get telepathy. I'd never really experienced telepathy before, but they're all telepathic. And they just let us know that we were to come with them. And we went through the processing. That's all in the book, what my orientation was like. I was assigned a buddy. And that image there closely resembles my buddy. She looks very human, skin tone a little different, hair a little different, certainly taller and bigger than most women on earth, but they match us up as best we can. And she was my 24/7 companion to answer questions, introduce me to my training so I could learn telepathy. That's a big job to learn. And and um and what to eat and where to go to the bathroom, where my quarters were. And again, that's all outlined in detail in my book.
Yes. Okay. So now people are probably sitting there, as I was, and I was so curious because you talked about, they didn't come and get you, but you were there with your body. Now they gave you an avatar body of some sort while you were there.
Well, I had a couple of experiences. First of all, while I was there initially, I talk about the scan. I had everyone walked through this like giant tubular scanner, and you walked through it. They were able to find out everything about my genetics, everything about my current state of health. They even understood about past life experiences. Apparently, there's residual energy that we carry with us. Like, it's phenomenal what they were able to find out about me. They're also able to find out what my learning style was, what branch of training I might be best suited for. Like, it's really comprehensive. And I'm sorry, I forget your question. Could you ask
Well,
me again?
you're answering it about the body. I mean, if you're,
Oh, the
because people
body,
are
yeah.
thinking,
So,
you
so
didn't get,
or-
you needed a body to be there.
originally, I had my body there.
Yeah.
Now, I speculate how that was possible, but I don't really know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert. So I think it was some kind of bilocation. I don't know. I don't know. But later on, I tried a clone body, and a clone body looks very much like what you've got on your back that way background, what we would call the stereotypical gray. I did have experience a couple times with the clone body, but it didn't take long before they had an actual physical three-dimensional body waiting for me. They're able to transfer me from my bed, sleeping at night, from my body into this new body. And I know it was a different body, even though it felt like me, it reacted like me, but it didn't have the aches and pains, it didn't have the imperfections, it didn't have anything like that. And I felt so fantastic when I spent time there. And then I would come back. So if you can imagine, I go to bed at night. I'm gone for 2 or 3 weeks doing my orientation. I was concerned about leaving my cat. My buddy let me know that I would be quite pleasantly surprised to find out that I would wake up in the morning and it would be the next day. And I didn't even really understand until I had experienced that. But I'd wake up in the morning after feeling pretty good. Um, I mean, I felt better through time. Once I got my second, or I would say my body that is aboard the big ship, I just felt so good. I didn't know I could feel that good. So when I came back in the morning, I'd wake up, my cat would wake me up, I'd be kind of groggy. I couldn't see, I'd have to fumble for my glasses. I'd go to get out of bed, my back hurt, my feet hurt when I start walking around. I'm getting old. Well, this was a while ago, but I was getting old then even. And it was such a shock to the system. Not to mention my head was full, because if you went on a vacation and you were gone for 2 or 3 weeks, think of all your memories you have to sort through, and like all
Mhm.
of this stuff. And then that night I was gone again, and this time 2 3 weeks. So what was happening is I was getting an accumulation of experiences that was more than what was healthy for me to have sitting in my conscious mind. It was too much data. And so I literally stayed in the house. I didn't go out unless I needed groceries or something. I didn't socialize with anybody. I stopped associating with family, with friends, with everything. People were all a little bit upset, wanted to know what was going on, and worried about me and stuff. And I couldn't tell them. What am I supposed to tell them? Oh, well, you don't understand. I was gone for 2 weeks in an interdimensional envelope somewhere out there with what we consider to be space aliens. I couldn't tell people that.
Mhm. Yeah, well,
You
it's
know,
exactly. I know, you take a trip, you're right. You take a trip, it drains you. And if you're going on vacation for 3 weeks at another place, regardless if you got a different body or not, when you get back, it's like you said, it's all up here. It's
Yeah.
not the physical part, it's the mental part.
Yeah, and I had to pull out all my memories and put them in order. It took years. Like I don't see how someone can just have an experience and write a book. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand how that works. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying for me, this is how it unfolded for me. And it took a long time. And then in 2017, because I have these paranormal connections, my guides told me it's time, you need to come out, you need to tell your story, you need to do that, start working on it now.
Mm-hmm.
2019 or 20, I met Preston Dennett. um, we both were part of the Forbidden Knowledge News Con, because that was when COVID hit and we couldn't go out, so we were doing online conferences. And that I did a round table with Preston Dennett. That's how I met him. He asked me to send him some notes about my experience, and I did. And he says, "No, you got to write a book. This is too good
Yeah.
to not
Oh,
write a book." So
I'm so
from
glad you did.
and I didn't publish until December 2024. It took me a long time because I had to think about it, how to put it together so that it was in common English, so that it was easy to understand. I wanted to sort of take the reader with me. So I took you with me when I went to one of the or two of those resettlement um, planets that had already been resettled, and to see what that process was like. One of the experiences was very positive. When I
You,
die, I really hope I go back to that little island,
yeah.
community. It was so fabulous.
Didn't you
And
get some
go hunt for,
shell combs or something? Some
pardon?
combs, shell combs or something like that. You were trading with those things. The shell combs, the shells. Shell.
No, 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 no. What happened? Well, actually, you're probably thinking of the beetle hunt, but it was when I was leaving that one of the young women uh, brought me these combs that were carved out of the shells. They're not shells, they're actually the beetle, they're not seashells, they're the beetle shells, the shells that cover the beetles.
The
Yeah,
beetle.
and they're very iridescent, and they're very reflective, and they're very, very pretty. Is
Okay,
that what
I
you're
am.
meaning?
Yes, yeah, that was what I was meaning because you went on another ship there when another ship came, and you did some trading, and you gave another lady one of those shells for
Yeah,
some kind of a cloth thing or something. Tell us what
trade.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said when you put it on, you had a feeling how it felt, or it
Okay.
was. Tell me
Let me
about.
tell.
Yeah,
Let
go
me
ahead.
tell you how that went. So, okay, so on the big ship, we have what we call the joining of ships. Now, I'm translating language that's telepathic, that doesn't actually have English words. I'm translating it into English, so bear with me. But so we would have the joining, what I call the joining of the ships, and different big ships would come, and they would come, and then they would sort of sit on top of or below our big ship, and they become like one unit. You can stack these big ships together for different purposes. So anyway, we had the joining of the ships. It was very exciting, although very quiet because they only use telepathy. But they have you can come and go and wander around the different ships anytime you want. I wouldn't want to get lost on one of the visiting ships. They're so huge. You can't imagine how huge they are. But anyway, so some of these I call them beings. I'm not sure if I should call them people or what, even now. But these beings would come, and they would set up these like booths, and it was very similar in how I felt. It was very similar to, if you go to a Comic-Con or a UFO conference, and there's these booths and people are selling all kinds of stuff to do with comic books or figurines or whatever. Well, they didn't sell comic books or figurines, and they didn't actually sell anything. There was just a a big fascination and pastime is the trading of things. They don't use money, but they'll often trade something, and they're very generous, and there's no scarcity and there's no lack. So everybody has enough of everything. Anyway, so I was wondering, I knew this was coming up, and so I had the big ship, which is, like I said, it's alive and it's telepathic. And I had the big ship recreate for me several of these combs that I could use for trading, because I thought, oh, they're so beautiful. Everybody's going to love these. So anyway, I went to this one booth, and the woman, she's so beautiful. She had no hair whatsoever. She's super, super beautiful, and her vibe was so nice and inviting. And she just went right to a piece, it looked like fabric, and she offered it to me, and it was exactly the kind of blue that I really, really liked. And it had these symbols on it that were kind of like sigils. I don't know, it's maybe part way between a sigil and maybe some kind of script writing. I don't know what exactly how it worked, but she had me raise my arms and she wrapped it around my body, and I put my arms down, and instantly I felt so good and so calm and happy. So here this piece of what appeared to be fabric was actually affecting my emotions through my own biology. So I was so happy to get that. And I offered her actually two combs because I thought that it was worth a trade for two combs. And she, nope, she only wanted one. And of course, she had no hair, but she clipped it onto the neckline of her dress. And she was so happy. And we became friends, and we would share meals over the next few days while we were still joining ships. And it was lovely. Everybody there was lovely. I felt no stress, no anger, no jealousy, no strife, not even competition, because these guys, I think this is another important aspect of the book, is it shows us what we as humans are capable of once we go to our next level of development. When we stop hating each other, like they don't even have concepts for racism or gender, all the things we fight over here, they don't have. They just don't have those concepts. It's not that they don't have culture, they have beliefs, they have all kinds of things, but they're so peaceful. And so I call it the love harmonic, because they, and love is more than just a warm, cozy feeling. Love includes self control and patience and mildness and kindness. It's a whole bunch of attributes. Well, these beings have been practicing this as a way of life for generation after generation after generation. So it's very peaceful, it's very loving, it's just cooperative, it works. And I understood from that example of being aboard the big ship, this is why love is so important. We keep hearing this over and over and over again here on earth. It's because when we understand what love is, we learn to love ourselves, we heal ourselves. When we love each other, we form communities that can accomplish anything we want. You want a Star Trek future? Learn how to love. Learn how to love yourself and learn how to love each other. Once we get to that point, we go, nope, we're not going to war anymore. We're not going to beat people anymore. We're not going to, you don't have to tell these people a bunch of rules or laws. They don't need them because they're all operating from the heart. They're all operating from this love harmonic. And the reason it's so successful is because it works. It's functional. It's absolutely functional.
Well, I got a question. So I think you're right, but I think I get something else from the book too, is that the ship that you were on really did provide you with everything you needed. There was no, I think a lot of things, problems people have here, governments, like you said, people hating each other and fighting over things is because of the greed of money. There, you didn't need money, you didn't need food. The ship provided you with food. There was, you got to tell us a little bit about the ship and how you were walking down the hallways and there's plants everywhere. Thought that was lovely. And that the ship, you could
Yeah.
put your hand on the wall, and the ship, you could feel the ship because it was alive. And then
Yeah.
you could talk to the ship, and you could, it was like being, to me, I kept thinking, was you were like being hugged 24/7, and the ship provided everything you needed, wanted, and it wasn't for lack of things to do, because you said these beings, they had sports, they had culture, theater, like to play music. So instead of working your butt off trying to make a living to just keep a roof over your head and some food in your belly, you're experiencing life, you're doing things you want to do, what you're capable of, you're having wonderful days to be alive instead of suffering.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell us about the ship. The ship, I thought that
Okay,
was
so the big ship, like I said, it's alive, it's a living entity, it's conscious. I had to use what I call the virtual reality headset in order to communicate with it, because my telepathy skills were not that strong. If I was born into that community, my telepathy would be much better. So I was like, if we speak English and we meet someone who's Chinese and they're just really learning to speak English, well, it's not the same as if we were born in China and we'd always spoke Chinese, or if they were born here and they always spoke English. It would be, quite a different situation. So for me, I needed an assistant. So now we had several options. We could actually use an implant that would allow us to just automatically understand each other. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to learn telepathy. And so we started out with what I would call like a tablet that we could access information. But pretty soon I started using the virtual reality system. So there's no goggles that go over your eyes. It's a very elegant, thin little band, looks like plastic. It wraps around the back of the head, and it has two little buds that rest on your temples. So it's very comfortable, very lightweight. And what it does is it amplifies your signal. But I had to learn how to do telepathy. And the hardest part of telepathy is not projecting. It's the hardest part for me was learning how to not project my personal thoughts and feelings, to keep that quiet to myself. Because if everybody was just airing all their dirty laundry and every random thought they had, well, they're more disciplined than us. They're not quite as random as we are in our thinking. But it would be a cacophony, but just we wouldn't be able to hear it. Well, they don't do that. What you do is you learn how to keep your thoughts private. You learn how to share them, maybe with one other person. You learn how to share what you want to communicate with maybe two or three people, or maybe you want to share with everybody. So there's protocols in place. And if you come up to a small group and you want to start communicating with them, you just they know that you want to share in the conversation. And then you have like what I would call a psychic handshake. The old computers, when we used to do dial up, there was that handshake. Okay, it's not as noisy as that, but you have a protocol where you're welcomed into the group. And then you share your imaginings with a small group or a large group. And imaginings are not English running through your mind. It's a whole combination of things. It can be symbols, it can be like short visuals running through your mind's eye, it's body sensations, it's emotion, it's a whole bunch of things. And I get into great detail on how I learned telepathy. But anyway, I communicated with the big ship through the headband. That was as close as I got for the time that I was there. And anything I wanted, anything I could imagine, the big ship would just pick it up. And then the whole biology of the big ship is quite amazing. So there's an air filter system that we would say is a little bit like a respiratory system. There's a fluid system. Everything is recycled. So when you're finished, whether it's your dinner, whether it's what's in your toilet, what doesn't matter what you are finished with, you dispose of it. It goes into a recycling system. And the recycling system you could think of as like a digestive system. So there's bugs. I call them bugs. I don't know what they really are, but they came across like bugs to me. They would break everything down. This is their natural, healthy environment. They're happy as can be being in that environment. They break everything down. Pure water's filtered out for the thirst quenching stations. There's also a viscous nutrient fluid that also comes out, and that feeds the baths, the public bath that we do every day as kind of a little bit like a spiritual ritual and healing system. Then it runs through all the hydroponics. So all the rooms and hallways and things like that all have hydroponics all along the walls. Beautiful flowers and plants and everything you could imagine. And you would pick and sample things and find out what you liked and what agreed with you. And then once a day, usually what we would consider the afternoon, but they don't really have time or seasons or circadian um, light or anything like that on the big ship. But basically around 3 in the afternoon ish. And of course, it's completely different there. So I'm just using that so that the audience can get an idea. We'd meet together at these food preparation stations, and they would just come out of the floor and just rise up and be made visible right before your very eyes. It literally looked like magic, but it's biological nanotechnology that the ship produces in response to what we need. And it's got cooling element, it's got a warming element, and we would come together and then we would teach each other what food combinations and ways of preparing foods that we liked, and we would share that with each other. And that's how I learned how to feed myself and take advantage of the nutrients. And then afterwards it all just goes into a chute, back into recycling, and it gets reproduced into whatever we need the next day. There's no gardeners for these plants.
Hmm.
We all participate in taking care of them. So for instance, if you notice that there's a kind of berry you really like, but it's getting sparse, maybe it's time to leave that alone so it can replenish itself. You might want to go and start eating something else. People would often because plants, everything is recognized as being alive. People would actually pollinate the different plants and things manually, just out of just something you do. Oh, you're looking for something to eat, or you're going to do a little cross pollination while you're there. It's pretty nice. There's no work schedule, like you have to get up at 6 and you start work at 8. There's none of that. You go to sleep when you're tired, you get up when you've had enough rest. And that was the other thing. So while away, I ate, I slept, I used the bathroom. Bathrooms are pretty cool, quite different than here. I have that outlined in detail in the book.
Mhm.
And you go about doing what you do. So I spent actually a lot of time in the beginning just going for walks and exploring, meeting different beings. And you just get a feel for people, and you just get I like that being, I like that person, I want to spend more time with them. You just really are gravitate towards, beings that you relate to, and some you may never even meet or have anything to do with. So the big ship sits in interdimensional space, and beings immigrate and emigrate from all different worlds. And many beings aboard the big ship were actually born there. Their parents were born there. There's a beyond imaginable amount of life that does not live on planets. Planets can be unstable. Sometimes people just want to be on these big ships, and then they choose a partner, they have families. Some of it is not that far from what we experience here on Earth, except that it's all very, very healthy and very, very positive.
Um, on the ship, okay, so people are going to wonder, and it's in your book, explain to them how the ship is powered. What powers this ginormous ship that does everything for you?
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. You see, their culture board, the big ship gives us everything we need. It sustains our food, it gives us our clothing, it gives us a place to meet and get education. We're so grateful to the big ship that we're happy to help out the big ship when it needs our help. So, what would happen is when the ship's energy reserves needed to be replenished, it's it's a project that we participate in. So basically, the big ship emits these tones that make us feel very sleepy and very relaxed, and we go into kind of a meditative state. Me, I always fall asleep, and I always miss all the fun because I'm always falling asleep whenever we're supposed to be meditating. But you go into this meditative state. Me, I would fall asleep, and the ship would draw from our life force energy. And life force energy is not even well understood today on Earth, but it could be called chi or prana. It could be called our soul energy, our light body. I don't know how you want to call it, but it would withdraw energy from all of us. And of course, not enough to kill us, just enough to take what it needs. And then when we would come out of the trance, again, there's tones that we would hear that would bring us out of the trance. Usually my friends would have to wake me up. And I felt exhausted to the point where I couldn't even walk afterwards. Most other beings were used to the process and they didn't have any problem with it. But new beings like me, I didn't, it was the first time I had ever had my etheric energy drained from me. I mean, it was quite the experience. Anyway, my friends helped me and we went to the healing pods. I haven't spoken about them yet, and they helped me into the healing pod. The healing pods are really cool. They're kind of like elongated bean shaped. They open up like a clam shell. They're in this huge, it's, I don't know, too big to even be called a room. And they come in all kinds of lengths and sizes. Some of them obviously were made for giants. But anyway, my buddy just helped me and my friends just helped me in. And inside is all very organic feeling, like maybe mycelium, maybe some kind of like um, vegetation that you would find in a woods, like moss or lichen, that kind of a bed under you. You climb in and you just lie there. And then the top comes down and you're treated with all different kinds of frequencies. And that can include aroma, like things that I could smell, images, or just light patterns that I could see. But definitely, my body was healed. And what happens is the healing pods don't give us back our life energy. They just heal the body to the point where the body can very quickly replenish its own life energies for itself, if that makes sense. Then they let you out. Then they brought me out. And then we went and had a kind of a party afterwards where we stuffed our faces and hung out and talked about the experience. And I didn't mind a bit. To me, it makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't I give something to this vessel that is providing everything that I should need? And then there's also a similar process for changing locations. Did you want me to speak to that, or?
Yeah, because you're talking about how the ship was there, but then you were, according to what you said, so you were there for a purpose, not just to
Yeah.
lollygag around and see everybody and meet everybody and have a good time. You were there to check out these new worlds and do some research and be kind of an intermediate with the beings there. and then but the ship had to go somewhere. So explain to us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'm using I'm using the language that I only know, which is English, which is I'm going to give you some ideas that is not exactly like what happened, but close enough. So, and I want, before I talk about that, I want to say that the main purpose of this particular big ship was to educate people, beings, heal beings, make beings aware of the greater reality. There's a pre-settlement program where we could be involved in expeditions to other worlds and gather information. And there's also a resettlement program for people who actually want to resettle on planets. So there's beyond billions of planets. They all have, this is interesting, they're all like habitats or giant terrariums. They all have fish and sunshine and leaves and flowers and birds and everything you'd expect, but they do not have humanoids. Humanoids are placed onto these worlds. They don't spontaneously generate on those worlds, and they're not evolved from monkeys and fish and stuff like that on these worlds. Beings actually immigrate to get to these. So sometimes the big ship will need to change location. And I have to use location very loosely here because it's not three-dimensional location, okay? So anyway, the process is very similar, but it's not taxing, it's not draining. But basically, and this is really cool, I mentioned earlier in my discussion with you, Robert, that our imagination is technology. It is portals to other worlds, other realities. We are technology. That's why we're so important and why we're special. And other beings that don't have that are jealous of us. And that just explains a whole lot, but I don't want to get too off topic. So when we want to move the big ship to another location, again, we have like tones that the ship emits. It puts us into a deep meditative state, and the ship uses the collective imagination, which is housed in our brain with certain, glands and gizmos that we're born with, uses us to fold space so that we can be in another location. So the ship does not travel like you would get in a car and you're going to drive from Vancouver to Squamish. It doesn't work that way. It's not like you're puddling along through space. It doesn't work that way. How it works is point A becomes point B. So point B is your destination. Point A is where you are right now, and you just become in that new location. Then the ship emits tones, you wake up. I always like to go up to I only actually experienced the refueling of the big ship and the moving of the big ship a few times. That's not something that was done every day. But anyway, we would go up to the observation, which is on the top floor of the big ship. And then when we would wake up, we'd look up and we'd see whether there was stars, planets, or nebula or whatever that would show that we were actually indeed in a different location, even though there was no sensation of travel whatsoever.
Amazing. Yeah. So tell us about these expeditions you did to these new worlds. What was your part in this? What were you doing?
Well, I learned telepathy, and then I went into training and I went into botany. I wanted to do a botany specialization. Excuse me. So at first it came from my curiosity about the food and the plants and all these plants that were growing around. I wanted to understand them better. And I ended up getting involved in botany training in botany. And then that led to some off-world excursions where they were like scientific expeditions to other worlds. And we were always in a quarantined area but we would just collect data. That's all we did, was collect data. We'd be there maybe for a week, maybe 2 weeks, then we'd take our information back and do further learning through something that I'm not sure if it was exactly the same or different, but it was very much like um oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm not used to being up this late. Um, holographic, a holographic image and information that we could then look at from different perspectives and all of that. But anyway, then I had the great privilege of visiting at least two worlds. Oh, I only remember in detail two different worlds that I went to, so that I could see what the end result was from the work that we were doing. And so the first place I went to was a community that had been resettled. They're very beautiful, healthy people. They chose to resettle where they would not bring technology with them. Now, every group that resettles brings a healing pod in the beginning, because it takes time for beings to get used to a new biosphere, a new place. Like, you can't just walk on the you can't just go onto the big ship and then feel great. You need to spend some time in the healing pods to recondition your body so that you can coexist with beings from many different worlds. Well, the same as when you go down to a world, you need to condition before you go down, you need to condition while you're there. But if I was part of a community who resettled permanently, after the second or maybe the third generation, the babies are just born adopted. They don't need to be conditioned anymore. But you'd be surprised. All of us are very sensitive. We have specific needs for gravity, oxygen content, um, nutrition, on it goes, right?
Hmm.
And so, anyway, I got to go down and be with these beings, and it was absolutely lovely. And I tell about a whole day I spent there, from the time we got up in the morning. These people are beings live in tree homes, because the planet it's kind of tropical. It produces a terrific amount of dew. And so in the morning, everything is soaked. So you'd have to live in tree homes just to keep from having your home and everything soaked all the time, right? So we go down the ladders down to the beach. We go swimming in the morning. It was really lovely. We come back to a big clearing they had in in the center of their little village. And I got to do all kinds of things. I got taught how to weave mats, and what they ate and their culture. And I got to go out and hunt for beetles with the children. And the beetles that are on this planet are very nutritious, a very high fat content. And it was the children's job to go out and hunt the beetles. So we went to go out and hunt the beetles, and we bring back our haul. And then later on, when we would have a big, like, one thing that I found very similar in most off-world communities is they really only get together socially for a big meal once a day. The rest is kind of grazing and just picking and eating. And on this planet, there was so much to eat. And so anyway, then they would heat these big stones and then put the beetles on them and cover them with these great big leaves. And then we would eat, and then a little later we would have story time, and that was really fun. We'd all sit in a big circle around the fire pit, and we tell stories, but it's done telepathically. And so one person starts off starting the story, and then the next person, maybe a child next to them, would continue the story, and then the next person would continue. And it got to me, I was really pretty pleased with myself, because I was able to telepathically bring up the image of a grizzly bear, and came out growling, and the kids screamed and the parents laughed. Although they don't use voice communication, they're capable of crying, making noise when they're laughing, screaming when they're scared. It's not like they don't have voice, they just don't use it for communication. And primarily, they don't use it for communication because it's a huge source of misunderstanding. Telepathy is right from the heart. It's blunt, it's raw, it's the real thing, and there's no messing around. You know what the message is, you know what the communication is. So that was really, really awesome. And I loved being there. And then, as I mentioned before, I was gifted these combs that were made out of the beetle shells. They use these beetle shells for everything. They use them to go to line the pathways because they reflect light, even the moonlight or the ambient light that would be around. They made combs out of them. They used them for all kinds of things, even in the building supplies. I get into all the detail of that in my book. And then, should I tell you a bit about the water world where I went, which was not very
Yeah.
pleasant?
Oh, if you want to. Yeah. We're kind of getting rounded in our hour here, but
Oh, well, listen, before I go on and on, because people should buy the book and read it, and
oh,
then you
yeah,
could have the
absolutely.
whole story and all the detail. But
You,
I
you know,
wanted
you know, the thing I liked about the book is talking to you. It's the when you're reading the book, it's like talking to you. So it's really easy to understand, and everything you said there is it's right there and in more detail, actually.
and yeah, actually a lot more detail. I tell you what I'd love to skip to now is you were going to ask
Yes,
me about
that's some question.
misconceptions that
Yes.
people have. Well, what was the
What
question?
do
Because
what do
I'd
you
love
think?
to answer that before we
Yes,
go.
I got all the questions up here. That's what I was going to say. You're thinking the same thing I am. So, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about ET or multi-dimensional contact? I mean, they don't even probably know what a lot of that stuff is, but ETs they do, and people talk about it all the time. But what's their big thing? Are they little green people from Mars? Probably not.
No, they're definitely not. They look very much like us. Most of them are taller, have larger frames, and they're so much healthier. And it just broke my heart to come back and go to the grocery store and look at the condition of humans. We are not doing very well. Even if we think we're pretty healthy, no, we're not. You have no idea what true health actually looks like. But I would say the biggest misconception why people are not doing more transdimensional contact is fear. And they're afraid of demons and goons and goblins and horrible creatures that are going to plague them and make their life a living hell. No, not going to happen. Well, at least it never happened that way for me. And I'm not anyone really special at all. And so the biggest misconception is that interdimensional contact is evil or life threatening or nefarious. The other huge misconception is that you have to be some special kind of person to have transdimensional experiences. No, you don't. You can be anybody. In fact, I would say the less educated you are, the easier it could be. And so a lot of people are having interdimensional experiences, especially while they're asleep, but they wake up and they go, oh, that was just a dream. They brush it off. When they're getting contact from other beings, they brush it off. They say, oh, I must be imagining that, or like, we don't want to be that weird, first of all, and second of all, um we don't want to be, well, we just don't want to be that weird. And so I would say that. And then, of course, the churches teach you that's demons and all that other jazz, and so you get really scared and you don't want to do it. But the truth is, I have found transdimensional contact very friendly, very uplifting, has certainly changed my life 100%. It's easier than you think. It's not so much what you have to do to have contact, it's more what you don't do in order to allow yourself to have contact and then validate that contact. So you might want to start keeping a journal, a dream journal. That might be a good way to do it. But I would say those are the two biggest misconceptions. Yeah.
Okay, so you just kind of mentioned and skimmed over it for a second, but how do these experiences change your outlook on your everyday life?
Well, first of all, I understood for the first time in my life what love means. I thought love was some kind of gooey romance thing. Like it didn't really occur to me what love was. And love has to be expressed towards myself before I can express it towards others. And so love means me having self-control, me having my being mild, which means when someone's pissed off at you or shouting at you, whatever, you don't retaliate. You stay very, very calm, and it diffuses that energy. I needed to be patient. Patience is one of my hardest lessons, to be patient with myself and patient with others. There's so many attributes that create the the category we call love, which can be, of course, defined by all these other attributes. And so when I saw what a community of truly loving beings was like, it changed me forever. And I started to learn how to love and how to love myself. And how I love myself is I'm aware. Oh, I got a light flashing ahead. Isn't that interesting? That light has never flickered like that before. So that when I learned that I could love myself and I got pretty good at it, then I started to love other people. And guess what? My whole reality started to shift and change. People
Mhm.
who I never thought I'd get along with, no problem with them anymore. It's kind of like a you do you and I'll do me, and it works. So it's how to create functional communities. This is how we do it. And we do it by emulating the way of the ETs that I experience. And then the other thing too is um, I think I think we need to I think we've been so programmed and brainwashed
Mhm.
that we need to come to terms with that. We need to come to terms with all the inversions here on earth, the greed, the competition, the so-called scarcity. All of that is bullshit. None of that matters. What matters is what quality of human being are you? And when you strive to be of a higher frequency and a better human being, we're going to have more contact with other beings that are of a similar frequency, similar motivation, similar way of being. And that's how we change things very quickly here on Earth.
Exactly. And I think you're right on, spot on with all of that. Um, because if you can't love yourself, if you don't know what love is enough to love yourself, how can you give it to others or expect somebody to love you back? And
Mhm.
that is a big thing. I've talked about that on the show. I mean, heck, my slogan is be the frequency you want to receive, because if you can't be that frequency, nobody else is gonna respond to that. So you got to concentrate on
Mhm.
you first. Kind of like being at that plane, when the air mask comes down, they say put it on you first. Don't look at your neighbor.
Exactly.
Put it on you, and then you can help them. But
Mhm.
the whole thing is you're spot on with all of these things and the garbage that they sell us, making us want what your neighbor's got. Oh well, he's got a better lawnmower, you got to get a better lawnmower, you got to have the latest fashions, you got to. And we work harder, we spend all our money on all these things, and we never really sit down to you know communicate or to meditate or to make ourselves healthy. We're right now there's that SNAP program, the food stamp program here in the United States, and the people are complaining. I hear, listen to this one lady, she's on there. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to feed my kids. I can't buy them chips or pop or. And I'm like, what? You're complaining because you can't buy your kids chips and pop and cereal. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I could see cereal. Well, chips and pop, is that what you shouldn't get it then. You're buying chips and pop for your children, they're little children. Oh,
Mhm.
so we waste our time and our money, and we never really think out of the box. Like you said, when you're in the ship, you're spending your time with great ideas, enjoying. You have no worries in life, so you have more time to think and learn and become more than you are, instead of working. Well, you got to work 8 hours a day today, and then after you get done with that slave labor, well, then you get to go back to your little pod there and rest up for a few minutes, and then you can maybe have something to eat, and then we'll do it all over tomorrow again. So you better get some sleep and rest.
No, it's nothing like that. It is so
Yeah.
lovely. And what a wonderful template that we can start. So the way what I'm doing is I'm trying to become the change I want to see in this world. So I want to emulate those beings. And the other thing too is telepathy. We're all capable of it. It's just been suppressed in humans, and we were given languages, and we were told, just like, back in the days when when North America was being conquered, and they put all the native kids in residential schools, and they say, you can't speak your language, you have to speak English, only English can be spoken here, or maybe in the southern states Spanish, I don't know, but that's what they've done with us. And I think the Tower of Babel, that story is about, we used to all be telepathic, and then we got forced into using
I,
spoken
I did a
language.
show on that. Believe it or
Well,
not, I
there
did a
you
show
go.
on it.
There,
The
I
only way
believe.
they could control language is because all the people were talking one language. And how would you to all talk one language? Is if you talk telepathically, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. And it's
And
authentic. There's no BS. There's no conning. There's no deception. It's amazing. And I hope we all learn how to do that.
that's
So
the only way they could have uh, communicated enough and collectively worked hard enough to create the tower.
yeah.
Regardless of what the tower was, we don't. It doesn't really matter. It's unimportant. The important part is they were working collectively. And of course, if you listen to like the Anunnaki story or something, some of the
Yeah.
movies, they talk about how the people down here, oh, they're so loud. And all I'm thinking is, yeah, because we're talking like this, we're all loud, blah 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 blah. We can't shut up.
Mhm.
And here
Mhm.
they are in a quiet environment because they're all telepathic, and then they come down here, we're all like blah 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 blah. Oh, that would drive me nuts.
And the Anunnaki and other beings, they know that we're actually superior to them. We're actually superior to them. We just don't know it. And we've been driven to the state where we're sickly, and, well, I won't even get into earth
Yeah.
politics and economics and religion. You all know that story. But yeah.
But what okay, so what is a you think we're approaching, a lot of people talk about this, and we are approaching a collective shift, and will people experience this contact as a collective? We have people out there like Stephen Greer, and we have other people out there who are promoting, hey, and like yourself, hey, talk to the aliens, talk to these
Mhm.
beings, are we making a wave, or are we just a drop in a bucket?
Well, this is just my opinion, and I'm not using a crystal ball here or anything like that. But I think that all the shenanigans, I don't call them elites, I call them the parasite class, because everything they have, they've stolen from us. They don't have even the full range of emotions and feelings that we have. They don't have empathy. They're not creative. We have it all. And their whole house of cards is coming down. And so we're going to see shocking, shocking revelations. And that's what it's going to take for humanity to finally say, we need another way of doing things. And there's a humbling, a huge humbling process that's going to happen. And that has to happen before people can make the mental shift to their programming to being free people. And I think at that point, when we're humbled and open, is going to be a great time for ET to come in and really communicate with us even more. Of course, I'm also a big fan of Chris Bledsoe, and he says it's going to be coming up 2026 Easter time. We're in for a big surprise. And
Oh,
I have no reason to doubt him. I have deep respect for him and his experiences.
could be. Okay, finally, what's next for you? Are you going to write another book? You going to do more in-depth experiences? Are you going to make a documentary, maybe, or something else? Tell what do you see on the horizon?
Well, one thing I would like to do, and I talked about it in my book, is around the same time that I was having this ET contact, I started getting these downloads. And that was crazy making as well. And I had all this information. I was scribbling notes and scribblers and all over the place and sticky notes. I mean, really, I'm sure I probably maybe I did lose my mind. I don't know. But I started getting all this information and I arranged it in a program I call Quantum Health Transformation. My guides were really clear. I had to make that for free for the whole world. And it's been out now for quite a long time. It's been out now for 7 or 8 years. I've just revamped it. It's available on my website. It's absolutely free. It's called the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation. Each step, there's 9 of them, takes you, raises your frequency. So you actually start at step 9, work your way through step 8, through step 7, 6, and it teaches you how to detoxify your body, your mind, your emotions, how to detoxify from the construct, how to open your mind. And then there are some spiritual lessons that a lot of you will recognize because these are kind of universal principles that will help you to get more success manifesting, understand the nature of reality, how words are actually energy providing. Words are actually like sigils. They provide energy. They produce an effect, all of that kind of stuff. And then the very last one, step 1, is how to raise your frequency so you can have more contact, but also be healthier and happier here while you're here on Earth. And so I think what I need to do is turn that into a workbook that I will publish. And the workbook won't be free, but the program is always going to be for free. And like I said, it's version 3.0 I just did last year, and that's about as good as it's going to get. It's got everything in it. It's every aspect of improving your life is in there. It's not religious. It's not secular. It's not, you can't categorize it. I got all of that through downloads. And of course, from my downloads, I would do further research and I had to downstep everything into English. Oh my God, it was a big job. But I think a workbook, a self-help workbook, which literally will raise your frequency and help you to do what I call ascension. Let me just quickly clarify. I know we got to go, but I think the first step is awakening. That's the shock when you realize the world is not what you thought it was going to be. And you go through a lot of your own process with that. You go through the dark night of the soul, you go through the hero's journey, you go through all of that. Then you do the ascension work. And ascension doesn't mean you go anywhere. Ascension means you're raising your frequency. That's what that is. So that we can then combine with other higher frequency beings here on Earth and elsewhere. So I think that's probably next.
Nice. I like it. I'll be
Thanks.
tuning in more and listening. I know you just had Nina on your show, and you had Preston Dennett. Preston Dennett was on our show here way back in the day, probably what was it, 2021, something like that, when he's just getting started on YouTube. I know, and I was getting started. Everybody was getting started back then.
We were all COVID either made us or broke us, and it made us. And yeah, he's just written his second book called Symmetry Number 2. Symmetry Number 1 is all about Dolly and Dolly's experiences. I had never met Dolly. I knew nothing about her. She had never met me. She knew nothing about me. But there's a lot of parallel experiences that she and I have had. So you might want to have him back, or maybe him and Dolly back. But
yeah, I listened to him and Dolly on their podcast or their YouTube channel. And he has a show every week.
Like Gate.
And then
yeah,
she's on, and I've read the books. I I bet you I got 15 of his books.
Oh,
So
wow. Yeah,
yeah,
he's very talented. And he's super
yeah.
nice guy.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He's just got that way about him. So it's great. I had him on for out of body experience, which
Mhm.
was really fascinating. He wrote a great book on it. I read that, and so I had a lot of things to talk about, too on that, which is do your research. I always say anyway. But he's a great guy. Really liked him. Had him on the show. Awesome, awesome. You're great. Like it
Thank
says,
you.
you have all those. It was like I said, a lot of those things are exactly like some of these other, like Dolly, had some of these same things going on. And I think that so many people having so many things alike, it has to be something real.
It is. We
Because
can't all be having the same delusion.
yeah, that's right. And
Mhm.
it's like I told my buddy, I said we were talking about Bigfoot, and just to make that clear, it's like, okay, so there's 10,000 sightings of Bigfoot every year. Well, say you're going to say that 80% of them, somebody, you could explain them away, could be a bear or something, they didn't get a really good look. But then you got them other 2,000, and 2,000 of them just saw a glimpse, but they weren't credible. Well, 1,000 of them weren't credible people. And then you get down to the 1,000, and then you really have to struggle and then maybe some of them got pictures, or they got a little bit of hair, or several people saw it at the same time and they all got the same story. How do you write that off? So is Bigfoot real, or is it make believe? Well, when you still have that 500 or 600 people that you cannot explain away, they're credible. It has to be true. That has to be true.
Mhm.
So there you go.
I
So
agree. I agree.
yes,
Well, I
and
want to thank you for having me on your show. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for accommodating me at an earlier time so we could do the pre-record.
oh,
I really
that's
appreciate
all.
it. And yeah, so it's
It's
wonderful.
all
Thank you
good.
for
I
reaching out.
appreciate. Yeah, appreciate having you on. Hope to have you on again sometime. Like I said, you're always welcome here on the Milky Way. And
Okay.
with that, everybody, remember, go out, get the book, read it for yourself, get on her website, go take that class. And I'm going to be doing that myself, and I'll be reporting back to you on how it turned out for me and what experiences I had following your class and the steps 1 through 9 or whatever it is. But I have to get on that and try it out. I always like trying new things.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it too.
And the one thing I know for sure is, remember, people, go out and do something nice for yourself. Make yourself feel good. As we said here, love yourself, then you can love others, then you can do nice things for others, because you want to be the frequency you want to receive, everybody. Love y'all. Peace, everybody.